Hey, welcome to I Am Refocus Radio. Once again, we are here today, and just like any other time, we have a special guest. Today, we have a true honor talking to our special guest that is going to talk about the topic of meditative self care. And man, when I say we are going to have a masterclass, I'm telling you, you might want to share this episode with your friend or family. We have the one and only Dr. Daniel Chapelle. He is a psychologist with over 30 years of experience. He is an author of 7 books, combining with different topics of psychology, philosophy, history, and religion. We're going to learn about his amazing professional story. So first and foremost, Dr. Daniel Chappelle, how you doing today?
Very well. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
And I know I didn't do justice on your whole resume, but for our audience, if you don't mind, before we dive into your book and the topic of the day, share with us a little bit about your process and your professional career.
Yes, as you mentioned, I'm a psychologist with over 30 years of clinical experience, but I've also written 7 books in the areas that you mentioned: psychology, philosophy, religions, and so on. And my primary focus these days is on meditative self-care, which you mentioned. My website is meditativeselfcare.com, where people can look up the 7 books that I've written, and they can look up a little bit of a summary of those books with some excerpts from them. And in the very near future, I will be having a free audio program on the book Meditative Self-Care. So people who are interested in self-care, in meditation, they will have an opportunity to have a free, complete course in meditative self-care.
When it comes to the books that you've written, kind of touch on us a little bit about the inspiration of your style of writing and how they intersect, different topics that we kind of mentioned before.
Yeah, I started off primarily as a sort of an academic writer. My first book was on Nietzsche and psychoanalysis, an academic book published with an academic publisher, and not necessarily something that most people would enjoy reading. It's tough slogging, that kind of academic writing. Over the years, certainly in the last 3, 4, maybe 5 books, my writing has become more geared toward the general reader, the general interested, thoughtful reader. My books are not for reading on the beach one sunny afternoon. They are serious business because they are about serious matters. And so it is for thoughtful people, but it is written in a language of everyday life. I consider myself primarily a teacher now, and a teacher's job is to explain complex and subtle things in a clear fashion. That's what I do, and that's what my last 4 or 5 books have increasingly focused on. I started off with Nietzsche um, because he presents a thought that is a major challenge to everyone. He says, how would you feel and what would you think if you had to live your life over and over again exactly the same way with nothing new or different in it? He says, some people would have a real hard time with that. And so his challenge becomes, how well disposed would you have to become to your own life to be okay with that thought? Many people, especially people who are educated with the thought of an afterlife and heavenly afterlife, they think that this earthly life can never be fully satisfying. And Nietzsche, like the Buddha, says, wrong. If you're going to be happy, if you're going to be finding a heavenly life, and if your life is going to be worth being considered holy or sacred or whatever you want to call it, you have to do it in this life, not by focusing on the other life afterwards. So I started with Nietzsche, then got into the Buddha, and then evolved into further issues like I got into ancient Chinese philosophy of all things, which came to me as a surprise that I would ever get into that, but I did. because these books, they're all related. All seven books are related. They're not sort of, they each have their own topic and emphasis, area of emphasis, but they're all having to do with this a continued meditation on this challenge that Nietzsche presents. How can you become so well disposed to your life, make peace with your life, so that you can say, you know what, this life as I now live it, I'd be perfectly happy having to live it again and again endlessly with no changes in it. That, of course, triggers the challenge of a major personal change in attitude. And that's what these books are all about. Um, so there you have it. Seven books, seven different books, but all related and all essentially dealing with the same challenge of becoming well disposed to our life on this earth as it is, with all its challenges and all its sorrow and all that. And nonetheless, we come out at the end of that tunnel of that challenge with a positive view of our existence, even if we've had, and as all people do, difficult times, difficult situations, difficult events. It doesn't matter what the content really is of your life, it is your attitude toward it that is the topic and the challenge. And so I'll stop here for a moment to let you sort of take over and take the wheel, take the rudder, so to speak, you know.
Dude, that's not Focus Radio talking to our special guest today, Dr. Dan Chapelle. And you go to his website, meditative selfcare.com. We are about to dive into that right now. So, with that said, good segue into meditative self-care topic. When you look at this topic, how can people use this as a way to dissolve heavy-heartedness and replace it
Yes,
with lightheartedness
that's
and
right.
contentment?
That's the focus of that particular book, Meditative Self-Care. It is it's a practice one learns to do by oneself. It's not like going into therapy. It's not somebody who's going to tell you what to do and how to do it. It's not a religion. You don't have to subscribe to any thought content or any theory or what have you. It is purely self teaching and self exploration for the purpose of self, help. It is a self-help book. The Buddha, we can say, the book is largely based on both a combination of the Buddha and Nietzsche, and plus some others as well, but those are the main figures. And we could say that the Buddha is really the first person to come up with a very practical, down-to-earth self-care psychology. He came up with self-care psychology before the West even had psychology, which the word psychology itself only comes into being, I think, in the 16th or 17th century. And we've had, relatively speaking, very little psychology in the West. Like Freud is only 100 years old, so to speak, and psychotherapy is only 100 years old and has got a ways to go. It has been somewhat helpful, but can be far more helpful than it has been. That's why I go to the Buddha and Nietzsche, because they tackle life in a different way than most philosophers do. Most philosophers seek truth. Nietzsche says rather provocatively, why not rather untruth or illusion, even? The Buddha also is not interested in absolute truth of any kind. He doesn't make any metaphysical claims, doesn't speak about gods. He's a very down to earth person, and so that's where we start in you and my personal experience. Most philosophy is about ideas that are shared from one philosopher to another. One philosopher comments on the writings of his predecessors, etc., etc. Meditative self-care does not require, does not involve um, other people's thoughts. It is your own experience. That is your starting point. The Buddha has a little sort of a saying about that. He says, studying, theology or philosophy or psychology or whatever is like it's like a shepherd counting somebody else's cows. You can be quoting everybody and their mother, but then you'll be voicing the knowledge of everybody and their mother, not your own yet. And so Nietzsche and the Buddha and meditative self-care say, forget about those things. I mean, read them, learn what you can from them. Don't dismiss them, and they're not bad, but don't put your hopes in those kinds of things. It is a self-care, self-practice, self-psychology. That's what meditative self-care is. Um,
People usually have no problem clinging to their opinions and
ex-
ideas and belief
right.
systems. So in the book, was this thing about we can fall into a monkey trap when we
Yeah.
try to cling to those things?
Exactly, the monkey trap. Again, it's a an image that comes from the Buddhist teachings. It's a wonderful image. It is classic monkey trap consists of a coconut or a gourd that you make a little hole in, and you put a little bit of food inside. And what happens is the monkey comes, sticks his fist in the hole, grabs the food, and then he can't pull his fist out anymore because his fist, by grabbing onto the food, has become too big and he can't grab it. So he becomes his own uh, monkey catcher, so to speak. He becomes a prisoner, but also his own prison guard. And we do the same thing with our ideas. We have ideas and opinions about everything, and then some, and we hold on to them, including ideas about ourselves. And that's a primary focus of Buddhist teachings, the ideas we have about ourselves. We hold on to these ideas, and just like a monkey, we don't let go, and so we become trapped by those ideas and those beliefs and those opinions. And the whole business of meditative self-care, which is based on the long tradition of meditative practices, is about letting go, is about like the monkey learning to open his fist and letting go so he can pull his fist out and not be a prisoner of his desire for that particular food. The same thing with us. We have ideas about ourselves and everybody else and about how the world is and how it should be, and if we cling to those ideas, we're going to be stuck in them forever. The way to become free is to let go of those ideas and to not believe. It's okay to have ideas. There's nothing wrong with thinking. There's nothing wrong with contemplating. There's nothing wrong with analyzing thoughts and what have you. The problem is the clinging to what we find, and that's where we are stuck. And that's what meditative self-care teaches is it teaches specific meditative techniques to first of all begin to recognize that this is going on, which most people don't know and don't recognize and have really no reason to know or to recognize. But it first teaches people to recognize that, and then it teaches people to begin to let go of certain things. And so they discover that everything that they can let go of is a little bit of a weight that's been lifted from their shoulders. And the whole process is about that, letting go. And as you said, and as I've put it in the book, is gradually changing from heavy-heartedness to more lightheartedness. It's not magic. It doesn't happen in a short time. It takes practice, it takes patience, and it takes persistence. But it is how you learn to lift the weight on your shoulders that you don't even know is there. It's a practice in the sense of the way that learning to play a musical instrument is a practice. You have to do it every day, and you just keep on practicing. And the more you practice, the better you get at it. Same with meditative self-care. So there it is.
When you say all that, it reminds me of a conversation I had someone this week, and they basically said, sometimes you have to learn how to unlearn. And I thought that was pretty interesting because uh, when we talk about letting go and not holding on to things so tightly that we can't even see from a different perspective, it makes you think a little bit.
Right. We learn, we quote unquote learn so many things which we don't even know we are learning, but then we're stuck with them. And so, cultures in a general way teach us a lot of things which we learn so that we can function in that culture. And yet, so we don't even question that there is something we learned that we could have learned something different instead. And again, it is that freeing up that tightness, that tight hold, that makes us breathe a little bit easier, gives us more room to breathe and to maneuver, and makes us see more broadly what there is in the world and in everyday life. And so we can, when you're a child, you cannot choose what you're going to learn. Your parents teach you that, and school teachers teach you that, and you have to get started somehow in a community, in a culture. So when you're a child, you don't have a lot of choice. But when you become a grown up and you engage, you choose, you decide to engage in something like meditative care, then you begin to have the skills to learn how to let go of things, what to let go of, why to let go of things, and so on. And, it's like the biblical saying, when I was a child, I spake as a child. But when I became a grown up, I had to learn to talk like a grown up. It's the same here with thinking about the beliefs that we have inherited from our culture. Um,
You mentioned earlier about our attitude towards life and ourselves. When one is listening to this right now and they're thinking about the ideas of living one's life uh over these series of choices, how important would you say in the equation that our attitude towards ourselves in life make up a difference in our experience?
oh, absolutely. It is absolutely it's where we develop our freedom or where we develop our imprisonment. I think, as a psychologist, speaking as a psychologist, there are like three kinds of things that form who we are. The first is biologically based, genetically based, biologically based, a certain temperament. We're born with a certain temperament. Your temperament is going to be different from that of your siblings or your parents. Each has his own temperament that is largely biologically based. So that's our working material. That's the stuff with which we can build our life. The second thing is the things we learn. As we just discussed, when you're a child, you grow up in a culture, you accumulate like almost like barnacles. You accumulate things. That's the second third of who you are, and that includes your history, psychosocial history. Psychologists look very closely at psychosocial history for good reason, because it plays such a big role in determining who you become as a grown up. Any trauma you may have experienced, any losses, any lack of sufficient care, etc. All that is your history, your psychosocial history, and that determines the second third of the material of which you're made. The third part is the most decisive because it's the only one over which you have control. You have no control over your biological constitution. You have no control over the history that happens to you. Until you're like a grown up, there's nothing you can do about the environment in which you grow up, et cetera, et cetera. But then when you grow up, you have that third thing, which is your attitude, your basic attitude. Attitude is formed by a conglomeration of lots of big and little habits. Again, we don't realize it very often and we don't pay that much attention to it. But if you're going to change your attitude or the quality of your life, you're going to have to take a look at the habits you have developed. So that's the third part. That's your personal decisions based on your personal intentions. If your personal intention is to make a lot of money, become filthy rich, then that's your is going to set the course of your life. On the other hand, if your basic intention is to find contentment and enjoyment of the arts and nature, that's a very different course you take. So, what we choose to do with our life, with our time, determines sort of in a big way what our life becomes, which is essentially the core of karma theory. You know, karma. Um, Many people, especially in the West, sort of live under the mistaken belief that it's some sort of magical force in nature or in the universe that is going to get you for what you did. You know, it's going to come back at you. You know, what goes around comes around. That kind of idea. That's really not the deepest sense of what karma is. Although, you know, the things go around, they come around to you. But essentially, karma theory is about intention. The West is focused mostly on the past when it does psychology. The East, with karma theory in Buddhism and so on, is focused on the future, on your intention. Intention is future oriented, trauma is past oriented. And so, if you learn about your intentions, you know, in small things and in big ones, you know, if your intention is to become a Wall Street kind of mogul, that's one thing, but that's a big thing. Obviously easy to recognize. But if you, on a daily basis, if you, your intention is to sort of, in a small moment of opportunity, to stick it to your fellow worker in some fashion, that's intention too. And that's going to come back to you because karma theory is essentially about karma is the most compassionate teaching, but it is about um, what you can expect in your life. It karma explains why your life is as it is. It explains why you suffer what you suffer. It explains how your life is as it is. You know, like if you're a mean person and you're always saying mean things to people, well, I can guarantee you, you're going to meet a lot of meanness in your life. On the other hand, if you're naturally, spontaneously a kinder person, or just a friendly person who says hello and smiles at people, that's going to give you different results. And I guarantee you what kind you can expect over time. So that's karma theory as the theory of intention, essentially, which is again, it's the theory of how what you do with your life, with those first two-thirds of your life.
Once again, listen to Refocus Radio, talking to our guest today, Dr. Dan Chapelle. You can go to his website, meditative selfcare.com. And a couple more questions before we let you go today. First is, when someone's listening right now or watching us on YouTube, when it comes to this whole topic of meditative self-care and how it be integrated in our lives on a daily basis, how can one get started like today, regardless of their culture and their background?
Okay, today you can start very simply by um, the easiest meditative practice to get into is to just sit somewhere, be quiet, you know, still if you can, and for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, no longer. Uh, just watch your breath. Watch the sensations of breathing in and breathing out, and the sensations of just sitting the way you are, just like being here now, this today, as it is. How are you? What are your sensations that you're feeling? Physical sensations. That's sort of an easy way. That's that first turn inward, because meditative self care is about a major turn inward, 100 degrees inward. Okay. So that's an easy thing anybody can do. 5 minutes, go sit in a lovely place that you like and just sit, close your eyes if you like. Keep them open if you have something beautiful to look at. Doesn't really matter. Um, it's not about doing anything. It's about just sitting and breathing, which you've been breathing all your whole life. I know that for sure. And if you're going to be comfortable, you're going to be sitting. So nothing further to do. So don't try to analyze like, what should I be doing now? How should I meditate? How does that work? You know, what is he saying? What does he expect me to do? Just sit and breathe, you know, and watch yourself. sitting and breathing. The felt sensation of sitting and breathing. That's one thing. The other little thing to do is watch yourself in small, small situations like dealing with your neighbors, with your fellow employees, or whatever it may be, with members in your family, and watch what were you thinking when you did that? Or what were you thinking when you said what you said? And do you really have to say this, that you know, what you could say right now, like real clever, you know? And just watch yourself because you're playing a role right there. You're doing something. There's a little mini drama going on, and you're playing a role in that. Watch yourself as you're in line for something, like how impatient are you with the person right in front of you? How irritated with the person behind you who doesn't smell all that fresh in the, grocery store. Small things. And watch, who do you think you are right then? Like you think you're somebody who shouldn't be surrounded by people who smell a little bit, um, or who shouldn't be standing behind old people who are a little bit slower. Like, who do you think you are? Because the central teaching of meditative self-care is we suffer from who we think we are, in a small way and in big ways. If your audience wants to take away just one thing from our talk here, it is this one thing. We suffer from who we think we are. And so you better learn to take a look at who you think you are in big moments and little ones.
That was perfect, man. Because what you just said had me thinking about a lot of things. But first thing is the name of the show is refocus instead of focus, because uh, our premise is that every day we have to learn to refocus and readjust on whatever our purpose, our goals, what have you, that builds our life, that fuels our life and give us the inspiration, motivation to proceed forward. And last thing is just listen to this whole discussion. I remember growing up, I would think like, man, this is like 1 in a billion chance of this moment happening. And once it's
Right.
gone, it's gone. And
Absolutely. It is one of the Buddhist teachings. First teaching is you have first uh, four contemplations. The first contemplation is to be aware of the incredibly rare and wonderfully great opportunity to have been born a human being in a world where there is access to wisdom traditions like those of the Buddha and of other compatible teachings. The great good fortune, the extremely rare and great good fortune of having been born a human being right now, you know, that's the first teaching of the Buddha, you know. So,
I appreciate you sharing that. And that's why I love this show, get to meet all these different people. But like I said, and you just confirmed it, the window of opportunity could be 1 in a billion
yeah,
years. And
absolutely.
what you can do today is go take the opportunity and visit our guest's website, Dr. Dan Chapelle's website, meditativeselfcare.com. Go check out his books that he has written. And like he said earlier in the show about a free audio version of meditative self-care is coming soon in the future. So we look forward to that when it drops. But like always, man, let us know how we can support you if you have any events coming up and how we can continue to learn more about you.
Well, thank you so much. And I'd love to talk again with you. It's been a pleasure.
Once again, I want to say thank you for your time, man.
Okay, bye now, Shemaya.